Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Agua De Nieve Wash Process Peru from Keen Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Keen, based out of Utrecht, Netherlands, and this is their first time appearing on the channel, and this week is going to be dedicated to reviewing the October subscription box from Dutch-based subscription service The Coffee Vine, as all three of the coffees featured in that subscription box come from coffee roasters that have not featured on the channel before, and were all coffees that very much sounded like my sort of coffee, so they were coffees and coffee roasters I both wanted to review. However, there are some extremely important notes to get out of the way, and the most important note pertaining to this coffee specifically is they accidentally sent me an espresso roast, which will play a huge role in the overall review of this coffee. Not a big deal, mistakes happen, but it is worth noting that I have tried to look up as much information about Keen before reviewing their coffee as I could, and it sounds like that they tend to have a more light profile, as they do highlight and emphasize that on the very start of their website. So I think I just kind of missed out on experiencing something a little bit lighter, as having an espresso roast is a little bit more developed. And I'll touch on that real quick, as for American viewers that don't know this, most American coffee roasters are, well, they're made for both filter and espresso coffee, and most European coffee roasters, they do have a filter and espresso option, so that way you pick specifically for which one you're going to use it for. I don't have an espresso machine, so this was obviously going to be done as filter coffee, and I had the coffee, so I figured I might as well review it, even if it's not going to be an entirely accurate representation of what I should be getting otherwise. So we'll just work with what we can. This right here is day 32 of this coffee. And recipe I settled on was two different ones actually, but it's just for the two different brew methods. So a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for the Chemex with a medium grind, but also a 16 to 1 water to coffee ratio at 200 degrees Fahrenheit through the V60 with a medium fine grind. And I think I liked it slightly more with the V60, so that is worth noting. And as mentioned, this is an espresso roast, so it has a little bit more of a developed profile. And I think the best descriptor for that is it's closest to like an American medium. So that's what we'll go with for the roast profile. And let's start discussing this coffee itself. Day 20, first impression, and it was sweeter and better balanced than expected. So it did leave a nice positive first impression, as there was a very slight bit of smokiness, but it complemented the chocolate in the cup as well. And there was a fair bit of fruits, slightly sugary fruits, but nothing I could necessarily distinctly pick out. So just described it as sugary fruits based off that first impression. Day 22, definitely feeling a lot more of the smokiness on this day, and I had ramped up the temperature ever so slightly to see if I might be able to get a little bit more out of it. But with the more developed profile, of course, I was just getting a lot more of the smokiness. Felt that there was going to need to be some adjustments, either lowering the temperatures or putting it through the automatic coffee maker, and well, that's what I went with the next day, day 24. Ran it through the automatic coffee maker and definitely felt quite a bit of the body as well as even more of the smokiness. Trade-off wasn't necessarily worth it for me, as I was getting more smokiness from the cup and a little less of the sugary sweetness. So it was just an okay impression. Again, still kind of some sugary fruits. I would most closely describe them on this time as a little bit closer to a citrus fruit. They have a lychee flavor note listed on here, and could see that, but it's a little bit more citric of a fruit for me. Day 26, ran into the V60. Coffee has been pretty consistent to this point. Not really surprising, given first time I tried this coffee was day 20, so there was never really too much room for the coffee to change without any adjustments to the recipe itself. Slight bit of fruit lingering in the background, but it's still making way for what was essentially a pretty smoky, chocolatey cup. Definitely the most consistent theme throughout the time drinking this coffee. Day 28, back through the automatic coffee maker, and again, could not help but feel that this was not the best way for this coffee, as again, we're just kind of dealing with a little bit more smokiness in exchange for the hidden sweetness that is in this cup. Hidden sweetness still there, just not as prominent and present as it was when brewed through other brew methods. Back through the Chemex on day 30, and there was some pretty nice parts to this coffee. Don't want to underemphasize those nice parts, and of course that being the slight citrus that was present throughout, as well as a slight red berry. So was enjoying the coffee a lot on day 30, a lot more than on previous days. And then day 31, final time making this, had lowered the temperature all the way down to 200 degrees, and that's when I was experiencing the best results. As, yeah, the entire cup is definitely encompassed by a fair bit of smoky chocolate, but there is still some pretty distinct citric fruit characteristics, especially at the warmer temperatures. So yeah, definitely worth noting. And as I'm drinking it on today, which day 32, I think I just like a little bit better through the V60, so that's why I would probably say V60 is a little better for this coffee. Let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And of course, given how much I've been discussing them, it's not surprising that the two most notable things on here are the chocolate at level 4, but I do want to also discuss the smokiness at a level 3, as of course it was a pretty smoky cup of coffee, and the bitterness is at a level 3 because if there's one flavor that I do kind of want to point out as well, it does have that, what people would describe as classic coffee taste, as it definitely does have that kind of coffee bitterness that I don't talk about a lot on this channel, but every so often you might experience it, and I felt like it was very much present in this cup of coffee. But other things worth noting, definitely the sweetness being at a level 3, as I felt like the sweetness in this cup of coffee is a little underrated, as it definitely justifies that level 3. So even if this is a little bit more developed of a profile, especially for a coffee roaster that is supposed to be a little less developed, and I imagine that their filter roasts would definitely probably highlight and emphasize the sweetness of this cup, level 3 is pretty good. Acidity still a little high, level 3. Finish level 3. Body, of course, is going to be a little higher, so we have a level 3 for that. And then the thing definitely worth noting is the citrus fruit, as the citrus fruit, again, a little bit more abundant and prominent for me than the berry fruit. And berry fruit at a level 2, ever so slight. Red berries definitely present in this cup of coffee, definitely could see that. And then the citrus fruit, I don't know, I would describe it maybe a little bit more like a, I don't know, it's probably a little limey if I had to describe a specific citric fruit for it. But other than that, I'm not sure that there's too much else worth noting in this tasting wheel. I think that tasting wheel, even though it was made for a Chemex, looks for the most part pretty accurate for the V60, maybe some slight adjustments here and there. The cleanliness at a level 2. Today probably could push that up to a level 3, but I can definitely see why it was a level 2 on the day it was made. Alright, overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. So obviously giving the benefit of the doubt, given that this isn't necessarily the coffee that I had ordered. So it happens. Again, not a big issue, but I think that even then, I thought it was pretty decent. It was a nice contrast to a lot of lighter stuff that I was drinking at the same time. So for a, what would we describe as a medium American, I thought it was pretty decent. Having the sweetness, but yet a level 3 is always going to be a nice thing. Basically a pretty traditional classic medium in the sense that it was a slight bit of the subtle extras, like those fruits. But it was all necessary, it was all kind of encompassed by that smokier chocolate, that kind of darker profile that you might expect. So I think it would be on a better end of a medium, but obviously not necessarily what I was going for here. I do like something a little bit more fruity, sweeter, as well as more floral. So not my specific cup of coffee, but I would say pretty decent done overall, just based off of what I was working with. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. I don't really know if I want to make any sort of suggestions, given that I don't know what their filter roast would actually taste like. I wish I had tried their filter roast so I could kind of let you know, but if this espresso roast is anything to go off of, then I would kind of say somebody that does like a little bit more of the chocolate. I'm just trying to project. I'm just trying to imagine what the filter roast would have tasted like. And I imagine that the filter roast would have been a lot like this coffee, but we're probably skewing a little bit more towards the fruits, maybe a slight bit more acidity and maybe a slight bit more fruit. And if that's the case, then somebody that definitely does like a more milk chocolate is what I imagine this coffee would taste like. And somebody that does like some sugary fruits, as I imagine that those things would be in abundance a little bit more than they were from the espresso roast. But I can only make guesses, and that's just my best impression of what this coffee would have been, and this is just my impression of what this coffee was for me. So I think I will leave this review at that. If you have by chance had an opportunity to try anything from Keen, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of them. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Agua De Nieve Wash Process Peru from Keen Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.